Hi, I'm Alex Mitchell and I'm the creator of Cancer Stories. Cancer Stories is a video diary program which is designed to help people like yourself manage their cancer. And the key aim is to record previous patients' experiences, really a wide variety of cancers. And these are patients who are genuine, real patients from Leicestershire who've given their consent to allow us to record their story onto DVD or the internet. What we ask those patients is really to give a brief account over 30 or 60 minutes. How did they manage with their diagnosis? And hopefully by watching their account you'll be able to pick out some common themes from one or more of those videos. And those common themes might be things like what resources are available locally or nationally, or how do families cope, or how do people themselves manage with those awkward stages, either the initial diagnosis or the complications of treatment, or perhaps psychological and emotional complications which are sometimes overlooked. So overall, we hope that by watching the video diary program you'll be able to take some positives from other people's accounts, and hopefully that will help you better cope with your situation, whatever that is at the current time. Thanks for watching.
Hi, my name's Rupen. I live in Leicester. Lived here almost all my life. I was born in Africa, but I was brought up here in Leicester. I lived in London when I studied, and I worked down there as well. And then a few years ago, I moved back home to be closer to my family after my father passed away. And so living in Leicester, I've worked in sort of customer service roles mainly. But when I was diagnosed, I was working with my partner in a pub environment, which was fun and quite stressful at the same time. But then when treatment started, I moved back home to be with the family because they wanted to sort of keep an eye on me whilst I'm being treated, and it sort of alleviated their sort of worry issues. And now treatment is over, and I'm back on the mend and looking forward to carrying on with life.
So I'm here today with Rupen Agravat, and Rupen's kindly agreed to come in and tell us about his diagnosis of Hodgkin's lymphoma.
That's right.
And I wonder if we can start off by asking how that diagnosis came about in the first place, and whether prior to that diagnosis were you quite well in yourself?
I was very well. I didn't have any sort of problems or anything, and I felt a pain in my neck whilst I was playing pool in a pub, and I just felt it was when I felt what that pain was, I felt a lump, which made me sort of think, oh, that's a bit unusual. But at the time I didn't think much of it. Basically I thought it was just another lymphoma which I had sort of previously, and it was completely harmless, and I wasn't that worried about it. But then when it didn't go away, I went to the doctor to get it checked, and he started the process of doing tests for all sorts of things.
How long did it take from those investigations starting until you finally got an answer? Because that is an anxiety-provoking time, isn't it, where you've got a symptom in your body and you don't really know what the cause is.
Well, I had the lump for quite a few months before I went to the doctor. I was suffering from anxiety and depression at the time, and I just didn't go because there were so many other things going on in my life. But from initially going to my doctor to being told that it is cancer was about 3 months. It's 2.5 or 3 months.
You have a diagnosis, Hodgkin's lymphoma, which some people, I mean, it's a hematological cancer, really, isn't it?
Yes.
But not everyone thinks that's a cancer. You know, when you hear that term, a lot of people don't really know what it is initially. Was that the same for you? Did you have to kind of find out about it when you were first diagnosed?
I did have to find out about it, yes. My sort of view of cancer has always been that it's a lump that grows in your body and it has to be taken out. But this, they said, was a blood-based cancer. There's no tumour as such, and so treatment is different. And I did a bit of research for myself and sort of found out, you know, what kind of treatments are going to apply and things, and then started asking questions about it.
And is there anything that you found out along the way that has surprised you about the whole condition, you know, that lymphoma?
I was surprised when they told me there were 2 different types of Hodgkin lymphoma. There's a non-Hodgkin and the Hodgkin. There's 2 different types, and they said to me that I had the fast-growing, aggressive version, which really scared me. But then immediately in the next sentence they said it's the best one to have, because it's easier to treat. It comes up quickly, it's fast growing, and it's caught early. Whereas the slow growing Hodgkin is difficult to treat simply because it's slow and it's difficult to find early on. And I was quite surprised in the way they described you know, what the 2 different types are.
So what early treatment did they offer you in that stage where you recently had the diagnosis?
They said that based on what they think it is, treatment will be chemotherapy and radiotherapy. They made that clear from the start, but they weren't sure how long the treatment will be, how much chemotherapy I'll need, or how much radiotherapy, if any, I'll need. But they did tell me sort of the basics of what treatment will involve right from the beginning.
And what actually happened next for you in terms of receiving the treatment?
I decided to have my treatment in Leicester because I was living away when I had my tests. But my family said they wanted me at home where they can keep an eye on me whilst I'm being treated, which I said was fine. And yeah, I went in to speak to the lymphoma nurse, and she explained to me about what changes I need to make in my diet and lifestyle and what to expect. And that was quite a scary conversation when I was told about all the different effects the chemo can have on you.
Was that just the lifestyle change in relation to the chemotherapy time, or was it a more permanent advice?
A lot of it is permanent advice, and a lot of it is advice that I'm sure most medical people will give to any patient, like giving up smoking, eating healthily, fresh fruit and veg, exercising, and keeping a positive mind. A lot of it is general advice that applies to almost everybody.
Was anything specific said then that wasn't more generalized, that was more focused on you or the disease?
Yeah, the changes to my diet, the nurse was explaining to me, basically I had to go onto a pregnancy diet. I was told not to have any uncooked vegetables, not to eat fruit that I can't peel, avoid eggs, so things like mayonnaise and things I have to avoid salad, drink plenty of water, but only tap water, not mineral water. That was quite surprising. When they said, you know, avoid mineral water, just use tap water. So yeah, a lot. Some of the things did surprise me, especially the changes in my diet, because I'm a fussy eater anyway. But it was all good.
I guess that was in the context of maybe, you know, quite a few changes that you had to make, you know, after you had that diagnosis. I wonder, as a whole, whether you think, for somebody new who was recently diagnosed with a Hodgkin's lymphoma,
can you see them being nervous about all those changes coming up? Do you see that as being, a lot of a difficult mountain to climb, if you like, all those different things you're going to have to go through?
It can be, yes. When I was first told, when I was having my tests, a few of the nurses and doctors said, don't Google it, because there's a lot of information that you can pick up on the internet which isn't accurate, and it may not apply to me, they said, and it can be quite scary. So I kind of avoided that, but I did do a bit of research.
Across any resources online or even offline, and any resources that were valuable to you during that process?
Yeah, I was given information about sort of internet sites to visit. Things like Macmillan was very good. There's other cancer charities that have their own websites, and Cancer Research UK had a lot of information about treatment and things. So yes, I was pointed in the right direction. But then when you do searches like that, there's all sorts of other options turn up which you're tempted to look at. And initially I was getting a lot of conflicting information. There were some people who knew people who had cancer, who were giving me advice about my diet, which conflicted with what the consultants and the nurses were telling me. And that really did confuse me a lot, because when you do these searches, some sites will say eat juice vegetables and drink that every day in large quantities, whereas my nurse said avoid raw vegetables at all costs because you may end up with infections or something. Another piece of advice I was given was to alkalize my body so that the chemo works better, which kind of threw me, and it was this person was quite vehement about making sure I do alkalize my body and drink apple cider vinegar and things like that. And when I spoke to my consultant, they just said, look, your diet is fine, just double it. You need to increase your calorie intake so your body handles the chemo better, but avoid doing Google searches for these sort of things. And
that dietary advice kind of reminds me of this difficult area where we get medical advice from nurses or allied health professionals or medical staff, but then there's a whole other series of potentially useful information, but it's in a grey area. I'm talking about complementary treatments, homeopathy, things like that. And some people put a lot of faith in those things, and some people say, no, I'm going to follow the mainstream medical model. Well, what's your view of that? Where do you put your beliefs in terms of what works for health?
I mean, I'm all for complementary therapies. It's something I want to retrain and do as a career. But I don't think it's the be all and end all. And what I found was that there's information out there that's wrong, basically. And I stuck to the advice I got from the hospital. Although I did get treatments done like massage, Reiki, reflexology, aromatherapy. All these things did help. And I advise people to seek those sort of therapies. They're very beneficial, but not to ignore your doctor's advice at the same time.
Do you think those therapies should be available on the NHS, provided for free, essentially? Or do you think they should be, because right now I have quite a few patients who come to see me who, like you, would like to participate in those, but actually they get stuck in where can I find them or what's available local to me?
It would be beneficial if it was available on the NHS, yes. I think I benefited from these therapies, and I've been lucky enough to find a charity that provides these services for free to cancer patients and carers and things. But yeah, I reckon it's very beneficial for people, especially when it comes to anxiety and fear and stress caused by this sort of diagnosis, being told you've got cancer.
given that you've got that broad experience of different complementary techniques, is there anything you can say to help people differentiate between them? You know, because people not familiar with the area actually don't know much about the individual techniques. Is there anything you can say, well, this is good for certain things, or?
A lot of the therapies are to do with relaxation. Things like Indian head massage, reflexology, aromatherapy. They do definitely help in sort of lowering your stress levels and leaving you in a position where you're better able to cope. Because you have, you know, a lot of fear when you hear the word cancer. For a lot of people, it's like they're being given a death sentence. That's the kind of fear that you have, and that is the kind of fear I had initially. I thought, right, that's it, I'm finished. And yeah, these things do help with stress and anxiety and depression quite a lot.
Let's pick up on that thought about how fearful it is initially, how scary to get that diagnosis, and I'm sure everyone would agree with you. But it sounds like you've actually moved your view, you know, with time, away from that idea that it's not worth it anymore, you know, I'm not going to be here very, very soon, to something where you're more thinking life's worth living now.
Yes, I initially, my first question was, how long have I got? How long have I got left? Was my first question, and it was quite funny. The nurse, she kind of chuckled at me, and she said, no, it's not like that anymore. She said, I don't remember her exact words, but she said something along the lines of, they're usually very happy when they get a Hodgkin lymphoma diagnosis, because they know that the patient will leave cured. And this was what the nurse told me, which made me feel a lot better. And then away from the hospital, I met some inspiring people. One was a 91-year-old lady who said, oh, you know, a young man like you won't have any problems. She had cancer 3 times.
Wow.
And she told me about her sort of cancer stories during her life.
Yes.
And I thought, well, you know, she's 91. She was 71 when she last had her cancer. And look at her now, she's still going strong. And I thought, well, you know, I won't have any problems. So meeting people like that really did sort of help me.
Was there anyone else along the way who you came across?
Yes, I have an auntie in Australia, and she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer about 8 or 9 months before I found out about mine. And she had chemotherapy, she had surgery to remove a tumour and things. And she told me a lot about what to expect. And in many ways it was good that I had her, because it was hearing it directly from someone who's had the experience. Quite often you hear what to expect and what may happen from nurses and doctors, but when you hear it from someone who's actually been through it, you pick up a lot more. There's a lot more sort of that's unsaid, information that's not spoken, but you do pick up a lot more from someone who's had first-hand experience of it.
And that's one of the issues for us as well, that we're trying to provide a forum in some way to do that, either on the videos or online or even locally. You know, if you go to the hospital, maybe we should provide more groups so that people can meet each other.
I think that would be a really good idea, because I didn't meet anybody except by chance. I mean, I knew that my auntie had been unwell that year and stuff. So I had her to connect with, and then I met a friend's mother-in-law, this 91-year-old woman. And if I'd been able to have that contact on a more formal basis, it may make a lot of difference to people. To sort of go out and meet people who have been through the same thing, same sort of treatment, same sort of illness, and to see that they're actually fine. It would make a big difference to people, I feel.
You were saying earlier that you went from, you know, being very scared, like life's hardly worth living after that initial diagnosis, to a different place later. Was anything? Did anything else help you in that journey that you took? Was anything else? Was anything else you valued, you know, that you came across along the way?
Yeah, I got a lot of blunt advice from family and friends. I was told, and later on I actually found out it to be true, that sympathy is not the right thing to be giving to people. It can make you a victim, and it can make you feel sorry for yourself, and it can make you feel things are worse than they actually are. I mean, yes, things are bad. You know, cancer is a serious illness. Chemotherapy and radiotherapy are serious treatments, but you can sort of lose sight of the positive side. But sort of depends on who you speak to. And like I said, I was lucky that I met a few people who had these experiences and sort of told me, you know, I've got absolutely nothing to worry about, and I will be okay.
I think that's actually quite powerful, what you said there, because often patients' relatives will say, how should I handle things? I don't know what to say. But what you've actually said there is that if you just give sympathy, it's like, well, I'm sorry things are in such a bad place for you. But it doesn't give you any help, or doesn't help you go forward.
It's not constructive, yeah.
Because if they can take a different view, like, what can we do together, or what things can I help organize for you, or, you know, thinking of suggestions rather than just being saying, well, you're in a difficult situation. Of course, the emotional support is important as well, but I'm just saying that there's a way to do it which is encouraging, I suppose.
Yeah.
So what was the reaction of your family and friends? Even, you know, there's close friends and then distant friends, aren't there?
Well, my immediate family, my sister was sort of coming with me to my tests and everything. Initially, we didn't tell our mum until we decided that we'll wait until I know exactly what's going on, exactly what I'm going to go through treatment-wise, before we start worrying her with the word cancer. And when we did tell her, just by the look on her face, we could tell that she thought she was going to lose her baby. You know, she was very upset, and it took a while to convince her that, you know, Mom, it's not that bad. It's actually very curable. It's very successful treatment, but it's just something we have to go through. And it was kind of a re-education for her. But initially, she wouldn't let me even wash my coffee cup. She wouldn't let me lift a finger at all. And then I do know that she had a long conversation with my auntie in Australia, and it was my auntie in Australia who explained to her, you know, make sure everything is kept as normal as possible. Don't wrap him up in cotton wool and stuff. And the very next day I noticed a difference in the way my mom was with me. She'd just let me get on with the washing up or the laundry or the hoovering. And I felt better for it. I realized that I didn't like the gently approach from my family, you know, saying there, you poor thing. That kind of treatment does make you feel worse, and it reinforces, you know, the fact that you're not well, and it's not very helpful. It's tough love.
What about those more distant people, well, friends and acquaintances? Any advice that you would give to people who say, I don't know how to react with somebody else who's watching this?
What I would say is try and keep things as normal as possible. For someone who is ill, yes, they do need to make a lot of changes. They're going to be scared, but try and keep, like I said, everything as normal as possible. So it gives a person a feeling that actually it's not that serious. I can get through this. I can have a normal life, even through treatment and things. And that's very important. Yes, you know, you are in a position where you are different because you've got this illness. You do have to have a treatment, which kind of separates you into a separate group of people. But you still want to feel like you're part of society and not sort of pushed away as unwanted or anything.
Which actually introduces another area which I find very interesting. I'd like to get your opinion of, which is, did you ever get any negative reactions from people or feel you were stigmatized by the illness such that you couldn't, let's say, operate in a normal way?
A lot of the times from friends and acquaintances, yeah, I got to sympathy, and they'd sort of tiptoe around me, and they wouldn't know what to say to me, and a lot of the times I felt that they thought I was terminal, that I was going to die, and so that really sort of scares people about, you know, how to talk to someone who's in that position. And it was difficult trying to explain to them, I'm not in that position, I'm actually quite normal, and I do have to have treatment for an illness, and it's, you know, it's going to be okay. But a lot of the times you've got to understand that they are scared as well, simply because, you know, they don't know how to react, and it can be quite daunting for them.
One thing that's sometimes variable is whether those family members or friends even have what they call carer support, i.e. source of help for themselves. Did you come across anything along those lines, or really would you say there's a gap there?
No, there's a lot of resources there for carers and family of cancer patients. Macmillan offer huge sort of support services in all sorts of fields, and you don't have to be the patient to contact them. The hospital provide sort of a lot of information, and when I went for treatment, the hospital actually advised me to bring my mum along for the first chemo, because although we managed to convince my mum that, you know, I'm going to be okay, she was still worried. Chemo can be quite traumatic, the effects can be quite painful. And when we sort of took her into the chemotherapy suite, she saw that the patients were normal, they were happy, they were chatting away, and you know, she saw that, well, actually it's not that bad. So getting the family, especially immediate family who are looking after you, involved is really important. And luckily we were able to do that, and it put my mum at ease, which meant at home it was a lot easier for us to live together, because initially, before she knew all the information, she was treating me like, you know, I'm a fragile porcelain doll or something. Which okay, it's nice to be pampered, but sometimes, you know, you think, no, I just want a break. But no, there are a lot of resources there.
This question of how did your experiences evolve in terms of coping with the treatment and then afterwards. I didn't quite ask you earlier, but how did you find the chemotherapy that you offered? How did you personally tolerate that?
I was really lucky. Touch wood, I didn't suffer as badly as I thought I would. From the things I read about side effects of chemotherapy, there's a lot of them, and they are really severe, some of them. But I was very lucky in that I didn't suffer as badly as some people do. And halfway through my treatment, I did actually ask the doctors, you know, is this treatment really working? Because I'm not feeling anything. And they said, no, you know, some people, there's rare cases where they just tolerate the medicine very well, and I just happened to be one of them. But yeah, it was tough. I did suffer with side effects from the chemo, but then I knew what to expect, having heard it from people, from the consultants, from my auntie in Australia who went through it all. So I knew what to expect. I was kind of ready for it.
Okay. And then when the treatment had finished, how difficult was it to get back into the normal life that you were kind of wanting to go back to?
Initially, I felt quite good that, you know, treatment's over, and, you know, I've been given the all clear, and, you know, it was successful treatment. But then after the treatment finished, that I started getting some of the longer term side effects, which came as quite a bit of a shock. The pain in my neck, not being able to eat and stuff. That was quite a difficult time for me.
Why did those side effects come about, do you know?
It was from the radiotherapy.
Was it?
Yeah, the pain was because I had radiotherapy on the side of my neck. They said I'll get pain in my throat, and I wasn't able to eat. and that went on for several weeks. I wasn't able to eat.
So it sounds maybe for you the radiotherapy was more difficult to tolerate
It was,
than
yes.
the chemotherapy,
Yeah.
at least in terms of side effects.
Yes, in terms of side effects, I had a difficult time with the radio, whereas a lot of people most people have a difficult time with the chemo. Whereas I think the chemo was quite easy. It's the radiotherapy I found. The effects of radiotherapy were tough.
How did you find the actual attendance in the radiotherapy suite? What was that like? Also the chemotherapy suite. I mean, I'm talking about the physical environment. Is there anything you would comment on in retrospect?
Well, one thing I noticed about both the places was how busy it is. And I believe they could do with a bit more space, because the chairs that the chemo patients sat in were chairs just like this, very close together, and the nurses struggled to find places to put the drugs and the paperwork and your cups of tea and coffee. They could definitely do with a lot more space in the chemotherapy suites, because they're just that busy. Radiotherapy, again, you go in individually. So it's one at a time, so it's quite spacious and relaxed, but the chemotherapy is like a bit like Piccadilly Circus sometimes. It's they could do with a bit more space.
Do you think that has an effect on the well-being of the patients?
Yes, for me it wasn't a problem personally. I thought it was quite nice because you were quite up close and personal with patients. You could get to know them and talk with them, and I used to have a laugh, because I'd be sitting in that chair for a few hours. So, we'd all sit there and have a laugh. But I can imagine some people may feel uncomfortable with the proximity issues. Some people don't like that. But for me personally, it was not a problem.
Now, after you finished the treatment and you were trying to get back on your feet, how long was it until you felt, let's say, more like your normal self, like your old self? How many weeks or months after the treatment finished?
Oh, it's... I still don't feel like I'm my normal self. And I finished treatment in March, so it's about 4 months ago that I finished. It does take a while. I suffered from depression since treatment finished, which came as a bit of a shock, really. But apart from that, it's not been too bad. I'm not very patient, and I struggle with the time frames that I've been given about how I'm going to feel and how long it's going to last. That's what I struggle with. But it's been okay since treatment finished. Now that the pain has gone and I'm able to eat better now, things are getting much better for me.
Was there anything in particular contributing to depression, do you think, that you've identified now? This was, a sticking point for me.
Yes, well, one point was when I was having my treatment, I was having regular meetings with the doctors. I was going in regularly for treatment. Radiotherapy is every day. So I just felt like it was like going to work. You get up in the morning, you've got to be somewhere, you've got to do something, and then you come home. At the end of treatment, it was quite weird. For a while I felt like I'd been dropped and nobody cared anymore, because nobody wanted to see me and I had nowhere to go, because I was going somewhere for treatment and stuff, and suddenly I didn't have to do this anymore. And because of the pain I was in, I was stuck indoors, and I felt like I'd been abandoned, and that kind of sort of brought me down quite a lot. I felt very down because of that, which kind of surprised me actually, when I realised that I was quite angry at the system for sort of dropping me and not caring anymore, now that I was cured, and that was quite a difficult trip to get over.
I think that's an astute observation, because a lot of people have that intense treatment during the acute phase of their therapy, and then as they make progress, they're doing better. They're discharged and going to maybe routine monitoring, maybe every 6 or 12 or 24 months sometimes. But they get relatively little contact, and the change from acute care to what comes next is sometimes a big change.
Yes, it is a big change, and it's very abrupt.
Yeah.
And it would be nice if I could have carried on seeing my hematologist, my oncologist, or the lymphoma nurse on a regular basis. I mean, I totally get the fact that they have other people to treat, and they haven't dropped me. It's not that they don't care. Simply resources. They don't have the time for it. And I felt at the time I could have done with a bit more attention.
Do you think we could fill that gap by having peer support, other patients who are acting in a continuum? They are there before the discharge from the hospital system. They're there during acute care, but they're there during the follow-up period, which I think of as rehabilitation. Do you think that the peer support model could fill in, or do you think it has to be medical contact?
No, I don't think it has to be medical contact at all. No, I think it'd be great for people to carry on seeing other patients and getting support, because like I said, I get the fact that the medical staff have a lot of people to deal with, and resources are scarce, and I think this gap can be filled quite effectively, very effectively, by patients who have been through treatment and things, and it's an environment where people can support each other. I think it'd be very beneficial.
I want to ask you now what you see in the future for yourself. I mean, you've come a long way in actually a short space of time, only 4 months, like you said, after the treatment's finished, really, which is not long. And I take your point, you're not feeling back to 100% yet.
Yeah.
But where do you see yourself going from now? Where do you see yourself going in the future?
Oh, I'm quite excited about the future now. Having had this illness has given me the opportunity. I had a lot of time on my hands, so I had the opportunity to think about stuff, and I feel like I've been given a new sort of chance. And I'm very excited about the future. I want to retrain in massage therapy and alternative therapies. And once I'm better, I want to sort of study along those lines. I also want to jump out of a plane to raise money for charity, which I'm not quite well enough for. The doctors won't allow me to jump out of a plane just yet. But I'm quite excited about the future. There's life, I find, has a lot to offer, and it's only because of this illness that I've had that I can see that yes, actually there's a lot out there to live for, and I'm just waiting to be able to go out and get it.
It sounds, Rupen, like your view now of life in general is almost even more positive than it was before the diagnosis. Is that possible?
It is, yes, yeah. Before I was in a mundane job, working Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 as a customer assistant, and you get into a routine and you're kind of stuck in this rut, and you don't really think about yourself until something like this happens. And most people, I feel, sort of live life thinking cancer only happens to somebody else. I used to feel that, and you can imagine the shock I got when I realized I've got it. I am that somebody else, and that made me think about my life, and I feel good about life now, and I'm looking forward to sort of going out there and jumping out that plane and getting my courses and sort of living life to the full, more so than I did before.
Well, Rupen, I think that's a fantastic attitude, and it's inspiration, I think, for many people watching this. You've got that positive outlook, at the end of all this difficult process. And I know everybody would wish you all the best for the future, and I add to that, and I hope things go well for you.
Thank you.